There's nothing conventional about the man who's about to join us in conversation right now. Not only is he a creative genius, but he's also an opera singer and a perfumier who manages to manufacture perfumes out of his imagination. He is the perfumier responsible for making Amouage truly the gift of kings. So Christopher, it's been 12 years since you've started this journey with Amouage, and in the process there have been so many perfumes and fragrances that's come along the line. What is the creative process? After 12 years, how do you continue to be relevant and how do you continue to evolve as a perfumer?
I think the key thing is not to follow the trend, and also, in terms of the business overall in the perfume industry, there are high points and low points. And the biggest mistake people make is at the low point that they start to panic. And when you panic, you start to adjust your signature, you start to adjust your DNA, you start to make many changes that are not part of your brand's spirit. So I think the reason why for me to stay relevant is just that I never care about what people do. I just do my own thing, because when my customers come, they are buying Christopher Chong, they know what they want, and they don't want me to change. And the worst thing people can do is to make changes. So I just feel that the reason why we have this longevity is that we're not scared of any changes.
Right. Talking about the same change, when it comes to the perfume, it's an element of you. It's a figment of your imagination. It's coming from deep within your soul.
Yeah.
And so how has Christopher changed? How has Christopher Chong as an individual changed in the process? And does that change reflect in the journey of Amouage?
Oh yeah, of course it does. This has been like a huge, massive. I see this, right? The job is so interesting and so fun. It's almost like an internship. It feels like a 12-year internship, and I just feel that I learn a lot. Every year I find something that is very interesting for me to evolve as a person. And also what's fascinating about this is you gain more confidence. You gain more confidence and you just say to yourself, I don't have to prove myself so much. I can be much more confident with my judgment. And that's how I have evolved, to be much more confident that sometimes if I feel there's no need to be complicated, I don't need to be complicated. I can just be a bit quiet and subdued, all depending on how I create the inspiration and the evolution behind the fragrances.
Right. Talking about your latest perfume, Portrayal, what is the emotion that you have transferred into this perfume?
It has been a long journey, because last year was Imitation, and this year is about portrayal of the individual. And so this year I was inspired by sci-fi, I was inspired by science fiction, a favorite childhood activity, which I love all the sci-fi films. And I've been so fascinated with time travel. And so there's something called wormhole. A wormhole is when you go to a wormhole, it will take you to another decade, another period. So I decided that I want to travel back to the 1920s, which is a favorite period of mine. I last visited through perfume with Journey in 1920s. Now I want to go back again, but 1920s London. But I am extremely greedy person. I want to go to 1982 because early 1980s is another favorite period of mine. So I decided to go to 1920s to visit the bright young things. The bright young people of the 1920s were a cult. They were the bohemian, intelligentsia. They used to roam around the streets of London having outrageous parties, and they were chased by the paparazzi. They were like the club kids, celebrities. We can call them the social influencers of the 1920s, okay? So I was partying with them in the 1920s. We got bored, because intelligent people get bored easily.
Very true.
So we decided to find a wormhole and go to my favorite decade, my second favorite decade, which is early 1980s, with Madonna in Greenwich Village, Into the Groove. So we went to the 1980s to start grooving, partying with the early Madonnas, okay? The reason why, you may say, why are these two decades? Well, these two decades because I find similarity. First of all, pearls. Madonna wore a lot of pearls, and pearls was a very important piece of jewelry in the 1920s. Lace was another element I found, and also cigarette smoking, very popular for women in the 80s, but it started in the 1920s when women first smoked in public. And in the old days, cigarettes were much thinner for women, with a sweet tone to it. So I took inspiration for that. And the last element was an attitude, was arrogance. 1920s and 1980s were extremely arrogant. People were so proud of themselves and so much attitude. So I took all these things and decided to bottle them into an olfactive bottle.
Right. So, you know, again, like you said, attitude, culture, you keep going back to these elements quite often.
Yeah.
You draw, it's very unusual, you know, for a perfumier to walk out of the alchemy of perfume making and just dwell right into culture.
Yeah.
Does that have to do a lot with your background as, you know, in the opera, in being educated about the cultures and, you know, being a person who absorbs so much of culture from around the world?
Well, inspiration comes from you.
Everywhere.
Originality comes from you. When I hear a lot of people asking me the question, how do you become creative? How come I am not creative? Of course, we are all creative. It depends if you have the gut, if you have the energy to show the world who you are. By showing the world who you are, all the elements inside you, that is the authentic originality that no one can imitate or take away from you.
Right. So does perfume in general add to that confidence and that attitude that a person portrays according to you?
Well, perfumes represent a side of you. It represents a mood of you. It represents what you're feeling. It's a way also to make an announcement, leave a bit of you behind through your smell.
Right. You talk about the brand's DNA,
Yes.
and like we spoke about it earlier, you know, there's been an evolution. Christopher Chong
Yes.
has changed. Amouage has changed. You know, you guys are going up the curve.
Yes.
So where are we when it comes to the brand's current DNA?
I think Amouage has grown now to become even much more inclusive, because when I started, I inherited Amouage Heritage main collection, which is very complicated, opulent, and then I added the library collection, which is even more haute couture, which is much more individualized and much more about the artistry of fine fragrance creation. And then with experience, I want to include all type of customers with their different taste. For example, I created the Midnight Flower collection, which is a level beneath the main collection. It is inspired by giving classic style a twist, a modern twist. And then the latest collection I have is much more welcoming, which is devoted to womanhood. It's a Secret Garden collection. So I have become much more inclusive with Amouage. That's how we have grown, to include all kinds of customers. Because my objective is, whoever comes into an Amouage shop, there is something for him or her.
So do you want to tell me something about your new perfume Portrayal? You know, what are the key ingredients that you've used? What are the elements that's gone into making this perfume?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the Portrayal for women. I was actually very inspired by the smoking culture of the 1920s and also 1980s, right? Where they got special cigarettes for women at that era. They were very thin cigarettes with a vanilla sweet tone to it, and it was called Craven A. But to create Craven A, you cannot extract it from the cigarette, so we need to create an accord. An accord is 3 or 4 ingredients to create an impression. Okay, so I want to also capture the fun, the free spirit of the 1920s and 1980s, okay? So I decided that the top note of this is going to be jasmine. Jasmine is a lot of fun, and jasmine is a ingredient that everyone can relate to. And the heart is the Craven A accord with vanilla. And then I wanted something to capture the projection of these ingredients by having alamy.
Okay.
Why don't you smell it?
Sure. I can smell the jasmine. It's quite strong in this.
And it's not over dominated by the floral, because of Craven A, the tobacco softens it. And it adds on to it also with the tuberose as an undertone. Okay, it gives it a slight sweet fruitiness on the top.
I'm glued to this. It's very delicate and floral. Is that what you were also aiming for?
I want it to be delicate and floral, but the thing is that I want it to be not overpowering, but in a way very strong. I want it to be a strong fragrance without being overpowering. Okay. And why don't we smell the mans? The mans, I was inspired by using violet leaves and vetiver and an ingredient called cade. Cade is an ingredient that comes from a bush, a spiky bush found in the Mediterranean. And then when you extract the oil from cade, it smells smoky tar with leather.
Okay.
I want to create a dandy effect. Because I saw the 1920s and 1980s were a bit very dandy amongst the men. So I want to create such an effect by trying to bottle some sense of fun.
Okay.
You know, a lot of like party, club kids kind of attitude.
It's a very uniquely different fragrance out here.
I just think that both men and women can wear it.
I know, this is something that I would definitely like to wear.
Yeah. It's a different representation. It's a different interpretation. That's how I do my perfumes. I may do a man and woman. I never try to have one imitate or follow the other. I want them to be able to stand on their own.
Right.
And there are two different interpretations of the same story.
Which is very true. I think this is quite different
Yes.
from your last fragrance that
It
you
is.
just had. So again, it's a very fresh outlook and
And also, it's very different from imitation.
Right.
It's a different take.
Right.
It's my understanding of the 1920s.
Right.
What someone from 1920s would wear. A modern version of 1920s, going back in time, that's different.
So anybody who wants to go back in time, this is your secret key, the time machine right here. Moving on, Christopher, you once told me about the creative disengagement process that a perfumer has to undertake after he has created a fragrance. So right now, after Portrayal, what is the particular thing that you're doing to creatively disengage from Portrayal and move on to the next fragrance?
Well, as you said early on, I've been doing this for 12 years. Well, I am starting to feel that I have written a book. I have written a perfume book. I've written an olfactive book to smell, scent, okay? I think it's time maybe I'll start another book.
Okay.
And I don't know what this book is all about. And maybe it's a different journey, but at the moment I just feel that, yeah, I have given the olfactive industry, the perfume world, so much different variations of my portrayal. I think each one is a portrayal of me, who I am. So I just feel now it's time for a second book.
On that note, that's Christopher Chong continuing his journey and his evolution as a perfumer. Thank you for joining us in conversation, Christopher.
Thank you, Ben. It was so much fun. See you.